Hello, my friend. It is Adrian, and I am excited to be with you on this Tuesday evening. And I've got a really cool thing I want to share with you tonight, and it relates to a GPS system. So, I have a true confession to make that you need to know. I am hopeless without GPS. In fact, I truly, if I think back on my life before GPS existed, and especially before MapQuest existed, I truly do not know if I would be alive today if those two technologies did not exist. So let me know in the comments if you remember using MapQuest. I think that I have killed a small rainforest alone just in the few years that I was using MapQuest because I was hopeless. And I used to literally, I would print off the pages and pages of the turn by turn directions on that back in the day. And I have been told by a friend, and this is a true fact, I've been told by a friend of mine that I would probably not be able to navigate my way out of a brown paper bag. And I think that's true. I think that is a true fact about me. So that's a little bit about me. That is why my GPS is my life coach. But I think there is a business lesson, a life lesson in there that I want to talk about. So I need to give kudos because I have pretty much stolen this concept from a buddy of mine named Dan Gibbons, who shared on Monday. But it like hit me like a ton of bricks, and it got my mind racing. And so let's dive in. So why is my GPS like a life coach? And why do I need to think about the things that I can learn from my GPS being my life coach in the way that I navigate my life? So, number one, tell me if you've ever had this happen before. You start off and maybe you're like in a place where you have bad signal, and you plug in, you pop up the GPS, you like pop in the destination, or you have the destination saved, but GPS is confused about where you are. And so what happens in that scenario? What happens is that have you ever had this happen where it's like your thing is like glitching, and you're like, it's telling you like, you need to turn right, you need to turn left. Like, I don't know where you are. And there's like all this sort of weirdness happening in your app because the GPS doesn't know where you're starting from. Well, that same exact thing is true in your life. If you don't know where you're starting from, if you can't take an honest stock of where you're starting from, then your GPS, somebody giving you directions, isn't going to do you any good. Because if you're lying about where you're starting from, if you're not clear, if you're not honest, if you haven't spent the time to understand where it is that you're really coming from, then anyone that you ask for directions, their directions aren't going to make any sense, because if they're not directing you from the place that you're starting from, you're kind of screwed. So you need to understand where you're starting from to have any chance of going where you want to go. So that's number one. Number two is that, okay, now I'm clear on where I'm going, and I've got these directions, and it's telling me, okay, now do this, now do this. Well, what happens if you make a wrong turn in a GPS? Anybody ever had that happen? You can tell me in the comments. What happens when you make a wrong turn in a GPS? You sort of make the turn, and then something happens, and it kind of does this thing. And what pops up on the screen? There's a little message that pops up on the screen when you make a wrong turn. What's that message? The message is rerouting, right? So let's say I'm going this way, and oops, I missed my exit, and I'm continuing down the road. So the GPS is like, you were supposed to go that way. And it kind of realizes that you're still on the highway. And then this thing pops up, rerouting, and it tells you where to go. But what happens if you come to a complete stop? There is no new direction, right? The GPS can't tell you what to do next if you don't keep moving. And so often what happens is that we get stuck. We get tied up in this space of I need to go inside. I need to go and find myself. I need to do the internal development. I need to do self-development. I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to plan, to plan, to plan, to plan, to plan, to take action. And I stop. I don't keep moving. I just come to a standstill. And when you come to a standstill, again, the tool can't help you. A coach can't help you. No one can help you because you are frozen in fear. So you have to keep moving. You have to keep taking action, or otherwise it's not going to work. You're not going to make progress because the tool can't help you in that scenario. So that's number 2. Number 3 is, how is this thing even telling you which direction to go, right? You have to tell it. You have to know for yourself, where do I want to go? Or otherwise none of this is going to work, right? You have to set the destination. And the destination might change, or the destination might be 80% clear, right? So like a lot of times when I'm going on a long road trip, like I might be going to XYZ resort, which is in whatever city. I don't need to plug in that. It's a 16-hour drive. I don't need to plug in the exact address of the destination that I'm going. I can just plug in the city, because for the first 15 out of those 16 hours, the exact address of my destination is completely irrelevant. I just need to directionally get to that city, and then I can eventually plug in the exact destination of where I want to go later. So you don't have to be 100% clear about exactly where you want to go before you can start moving. But if I tell it that I want to go to Washington and I accidentally say Washington, D.C. when I meant Washington State, I'm going to have some problems, right? That's actually probably something that I would do. I would take the wrong turn for the wrong Washington, and I'd be going west for like 5 hours, and all of a sudden go, oh crap, this doesn't seem right. If you need any evidence of this, you can look back on a post from a couple of months ago where basically that same thing happened when I was climbing a mountain, and I was like an hour to 2 hours into the hike and went, gee, we haven't really gone up. That's probably not good. And we had to backtrack about 5 miles. So that's another story for another time. But this is important. You have to know where you're going. You have to pay attention, or you're going to be a problem. And that actually ties very well into my final point about why a GPS is a life coach, which is that you have to actually follow the instructions, but you also have to exercise some common sense. So you'll have to let me know if you have ever seen this episode of The Office. This is one of my favorite episodes ever, because I can actually imagine doing this shit, which is really sad and scary. But there's this moment where Michael Scott, the sort of buffoon guy played by Steve Carell, that he and Jim Halpert, his sort of right-hand man, are on a business trip together. They go to some other city, they rent a car, and the car has a GPS system in it. And they don't know where they're going, whatever, they're going along the way. And Michael follows the instructions to turn right. And probably it meant turn right in another 100 feet. It was miscalibrated or whatever, but he just blindly follows the instructions. He turns right, and he literally drives this rental car into like a pond, like off the road and straight into the water. So you need to learn to follow instructions. You need to find the right coach. You need to listen to what that coach is teaching you, and you need to follow what that person is telling you. But you also need to like have a brain, right? And this is where, again, I am not maybe the number one bright shining star when it comes to that, because I went 5 miles off track on this hike before I came to my realization that, geez, on a mountain climb where you're supposed to summit a peak, you should probably go up sooner or later. And I waited a very long time to come to that realization. But this is that example, right? Like you have to follow instructions, but you have to take ownership, right? Because a coach, you want to have the right coach, but at the end of the day, you're responsible for your results. And so you can't just say, oh, well, I just followed what the coach was telling me. I just followed what the tool was telling me, and I didn't get what I wanted, and so it's their fault, right? You are ultimately responsible for your own results. So you're responsible for finding the right coach. You're responsible for listening to what they're telling you to do, but you're also responsible for ultimately having enough wherewithal that if the direction doesn't make sense, to actually question it. Maybe that doesn't mean you just don't follow it. Maybe you challenge your coach. You ask a question. You say, why am I doing this? Or this doesn't make sense to me. Is that because this is actually maybe not the right thing? Or is it that maybe this is someplace where you have more experience? You have to be active in the process of getting where you want to go, because nobody else is responsible. Nobody gets the glory if you get the win, and nobody gets the blame if you take the loss, right? You're responsible for you, and you're responsible for the inputs, the coaches, the advisors that you bring in with you along the way in that process. So that GPS analogy is super important and really powerful for you in thinking about how you navigate through your life. You need to know where you're starting from. You need to be honest about that. You need to know, you need to keep moving, right? If you don't keep moving, if you don't take action, if you don't take the right next step, then your tool or your coach or whatever it is that you're doing can't help you to get where you want to go. You need to know where you're going, because nobody can help you get where you're trying to go if you can't tell them what it is that you're trying to achieve. And it's okay to be 80-20 on that. It's okay to say, I want to get roughly here, and then I will kind of crystallize and clarify what that looks like along the way. I'm not going to just wait forever until it's perfect. And then lastly, you got to follow instructions of the right person, but you got to take ownership and use your own common sense and ask questions. Because if you don't take that active role and you don't get what you want, you have nobody to blame but yourself. So I hope that's helpful for you. If you got value out of this, I would love it if you would share this, or if you would tag someone here in the comments that needs to see this. For my friends on Instagram, we're going to post this on IGTV right after this. And so what I would love for you to do is, as soon as I post it there, drop a comment that says what your biggest takeaway was from this, so that our friends who are watching on the replay can see it, because otherwise all these awesome comments that have been coming through on Instagram disappear forever. It's so annoying. So would love you to do that. But here's the last thing I want you to do. If this made sense to you, we do a lot in this space. We do a lot of helping our people to get where they want to go. In fact, what I mentioned at the beginning of this, my friend Dan Gibbons shared this analogy that I kind of expanded on tonight. And that came from a training that we do every week. It's something very special that we do for our contact mapping community. And it's an invite only thing. It's a special thing just for our customers. But I want to invite you to be our special guest and to come and experience one of these things with us. And so if you would be interested in coming